They say love is the most beautiful thing in the world. But they never tell you that love can also be a mirror or a mask. They never tell you that people don't always fall in love with you. They fall in love with the way you help them forget themselves, the way your energy calms their chaos, the way your presence softens their shame. Sometimes they fall in love, not with your soul, but with their reflection in your eyes. And you become the screen they play their story on, a vessel for their fantasy, a shelter for their unhealed wounds, a placeholder for the love they've never given themselves. There are only two reasons someone will ever fall in love with you. One, because they truly see you unmasked, unpolished, unapologetically whole. The other, because they see a piece of themselves in you. A memory, a projection, an emotional wound dressed in skin. One is sacred, the other is survival. One heals you slowly, the other breaks you in ways that feel strangely familiar because you've been broken there before. And the cruelest part? Both will feel like fate. Both will feel like destiny knocking at the door of your soul. But not all that feels destined is divine. Some things feel like home only because the pain is familiar. This is how most people learn to love. Not from presence, but from pattern. Not from truth, but from memory. They meet you and something in them stirs. But what stirs is not awareness, it's ache. It's their unconscious whispering, yes, this feels like the one. But it's not the one. It's the old wound waking up, looking for closure. It's the same dance in a different body. And if you're not conscious, you'll call it chemistry. You'll call it magic. You'll call it love. But it's not love. It's a reenactment. Carl Jung once warned us with piercing clarity. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And so you chase what feels magnetic. You call it alignment. You confuse longing with intimacy, and the cycle continues. You end up back in the same pain, just in a prettier package. But here's the truth, no one ever taught you. The soul doesn't always crave what's good for it. Sometimes the soul craves what's familiar, even if that familiarity is rooted in pain. Even if what you're calling love is really your nervous system, trying to rewrite an old story with a new character. That's why you find yourself pulled to people who make you anxious, who light you up and disappear, who know how to play the role your body already knows how to respond to. You call it connection, but it's chemistry built on wounds. You weren't chosen because you were seen. You were chosen because you were useful to their illusion, because you helped them forget what they weren't ready to face. And you played the part. Not because you're broken, but because you too wanted to be loved, even if it meant being loved for the mask instead of the truth. But one day, something breaks. You speak. You stop smiling to make them comfortable. You stop softening to keep them close. And suddenly, the spell dissolves. You are no longer what they imagined. And they leave not because you are too much, but because the illusion cracked. And what they saw behind the mask was real. And realness has always terrified those still in hiding. Love built on illusion cannot survive your truth. It collapses under the weight of your becoming. And though it hurts, this moment is a gift, because the collapse of illusion is always the first step toward liberation. Now you get to ask the question your soul has waited a lifetime to ask. What is love when I am no longer performing? Most people will never know because most people aren't in love with love. They're in love with relief. Relief from loneliness, from fear, from the pain they carry but never speak aloud. They enter relationships not to be seen but to be soothed. And in doing so, they mistake the medicine for the mirror. And yet, something in you is awakening. A deeper part, a quieter knowing. The realization that you are not here to be worshipped for your light, while your shadow is ignored. You are not here to be used as a salve for someone else's self-neglect. You are here to be met in the silence, in the shadow, in the fire, and the bloom. And only those who have met themselves can truly meet you there. When you begin to see clearly, everything changes. You start to realize how often you've been loved, not for your truth, but for your usefulness. Not for your presence, but for your performance. Not for your wholeness, but for the role you played in someone else's story. And sometimes you weren't even playing, just standing there, still becoming. And someone projected all of their unmet desires onto you. They said, I love you. But what they meant was, I love what I see in you that I lost in myself. They weren't falling in love with your soul. They were falling in love with the feeling you gave them. And when that feeling faded, when the role stopped serving the illusion, they withdrew. It takes heartbreak to wake up from that kind of love. It takes silence to see the story clearly. And in that silence, something inside you breaks, but not in the way you feared. It's not the soul that breaks. It's the spell. And when the spell is broken, the self finally speaks. And it says, "Never again will I be loved for a mask." It says, "I am not available for half-light love." It says, "I would rather be alone in my truth than accompanied in a lie." That moment, though it aches, is the beginning of your freedom. Carl Jung once told us, "We always marry the wrong person for the right reasons because we marry our unconscious." And not just in marriage. We attach, we cling, we fall headfirst into those who carry our history, who remind us of the pain we never fully named, who feel like home, even when home was a place that taught us to doubt ourselves, to silence ourselves, to question our worth. And because it's familiar, we call it fate. But fate without awareness is just repetition. It's the same old wound wearing a different name. This is why you were drawn to people who made you ache. This is why you stayed in relationships that required you to betray your own body. You weren't weak. You were remembering. You were trying to resolve something unfinished. You weren't falling in love. You were falling into memory. But this is the turning point when you stop running toward the familiar and start walking into the unknown. When you stop choosing the people who feel like home and start choosing the ones who feel like peace. When you stop choosing from the ache and begin choosing from awareness. This is when love becomes something else entirely. It stops being a performance. It stops being hungry. It starts being a presence. You begin to want something quieter, something deeper, something that doesn't rush in and consume you, something that sits beside you and stays. Love that listens more than it speaks, that breathes with you, not over you. Love that doesn't rescue you, but reminds you that you've never needed saving. And in this love, your nervous system finally exhales. Your body softens because there's no role to play, no part to perform. There's just you and someone who meets you there. Carl Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." You've dreamed enough. You've lived in projection long enough. You've waited to be chosen by those who never saw you. Now you choose yourself not as a final act of defiance, but as an act of devotion. You begin to trust that your truth is the filter, your clarity is the invitation, your presence is enough, and this changes everything. Because now the ones who are drawn to you are no longer responding to your performance. They're responding to your peace, to your rootedness, to your boundaries. They're not coming for the mask. They're coming for the mirror, the sacred mirror that no longer distorts itself to be loved. The mirror that says, "I will not become smaller so you can feel more comfortable. I will not disappear to be held. I will not fracture myself for proximity." You are no longer willing to be chosen by those who only love the idea of you. You are no longer flattered by attention that asks you to abandon your becoming. You are no longer asking anyone to rescue you from yourself, because now you've become your own home, your own shelter, your own safe place. It is a strange and beautiful thing to return to yourself after years of being loved for who you never were. It is quiet, it is humbling, it is raw. There's grief in that return, grief for all the times you said yes when you meant no, for all the times you accepted love that wasn't really love, for all the times you traded authenticity for approval. But there's also peace, because now you no longer have to become what someone else wants in order to be chosen. You no longer have to silence your truth just to be held. You no longer have to abandon your boundaries in the name of connection. You are done performing. You are done auditioning for love. And something miraculous happens when you stop playing a role. The people who were never really here for your truth fall away. Not always dramatically, sometimes quietly, slowly, a drifting, a disappearance. At first it feels like loss, but eventually it feels like relief. Because what's leaving your life was never aligned with your soul. It was aligned with your wound. Carl Jung once said, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another." There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. And there is no recipe for love that fits every soul. What fits you now is different from what fit you when you were still trying to be digestible. You are not one size fits all. You were never meant to be. And the ones who are meant for you will not be afraid of your form. They will not flinch at your fullness. They will not ask you to soften what was born to speak. You begin to see the difference between those who love your soul and those who love the story they wrote about you. One asks for nothing but truth. The other asks you to keep performing so they can stay asleep. One feels like silence and breath and grounding. The other feels like uncertainty and adrenaline and confusion. You stop confusing butterflies with signs. You stop longing for a signal from the universe. You start listening to your body, not your fantasy. And your body, it tells the truth. It always has. It tells you when your heart feels safe, when your boundaries are respected, when your energy doesn't have to protect itself. You stop being addicted to the roller coaster. You stop needing to be the healer, the muse, the mystery. You stop falling for those who need you more than they see you. And for the first time, your peace becomes more important than your chemistry. This is when love becomes holy because it is no longer built on illusion. It is built on presence. You are not a fantasy. You are a soul. You are not a mirror for someone else's longing. You are a mirror for truth. And only those who have faced their own will recognize it in you. They won't flinch when your shadow speaks. They won't disappear when your truth trembles. They will sit with you, breathe with you, listen to you, not because they need to fix you, but because they've already met themselves in the dark and they are no longer afraid of yours. Real love arrives when you are no longer willing to disappear for it, when you are no longer seduced by suffering, when you are no longer entertained by inconsistency, when you are no longer loyal to the parts of you that crave what hurts. This love is quiet, stable, often unfamiliar at first. It isn't in demand. It doesn't consume. It doesn't leave you breathless. It lets you breathe. It meets you in the spaces you once tried to fill with noise. It listens, it softens, it stays. This love will not intoxicate you with promises. It will not sweep you into a fairy tale, but it will walk beside you every time you forget your worth. It will hold your hand through the parts of your healing that feel slow and messy and unspectacular. It will witness your becoming without trying to accelerate it. You'll know it when your nervous system finally relaxes, when your body stops bracing for impact, when your truth no longer feels like a risk, when your softness isn't a currency, when your boundaries are not interpreted as rejection. You'll know it when you stop questioning whether you are too much and start realizing that the right presence makes your depth feel like home. The people who meet you here are different. They are not infatuated by potential. They are grounded in presence. They are not attracted to your silence because it allows them to avoid their own reflection. They are drawn to your wholeness, your mess, your contradictions, your humanity. They do not need you to dim. They do not need you to play small so they can feel big. They have met their own shadows and so they do not fear yours. They have buried their own illusions and so they do not project their salvation onto you. You do not need to be perfect for them to stay. You do not need to be soft to be worthy. You do not need to agree to be safe. You do not need to abandon yourself in the name of love, because love is not something you earn through sacrifice. It is something that recognizes itself in the quiet truth of who you are. Carl Jung once offered us this deep truth. Individuation does not shut one out from the world, but gathers the world to oneself. And now that you've come home to yourself fully, gently, without apology, you no longer need to chase connection. You become connected. You draw toward you those who are ready to meet you in the stillness you fought so hard to create. You stop being a magnet for chaos and start becoming a sanctuary for truth. You stop being chosen for your potential and start being cherished for your presence. You are no longer starving. You are no longer searching for someone to rescue you from your own reflection. You are your own becoming. And the love you attract now is no longer a reenactment of your wounds. It is a celebration of your return. When you return to yourself truly, fully, without compromise, everything changes. You stop asking for permission to be real. You stop performing for love that costs you your truth. You stop handing your heart to people who only know how to hold your image, not your reality. And in that stopping, something breathtaking begins. You start attracting what aligns with the self you no longer betray. There is a stillness in this kind of love, a clarity, a knowing. It arrives not to rescue you from yourself, but to meet you inside the sacred home you've built within. This person will not ask you to be less. They will not be overwhelmed by your depth. They will not turn away when you tremble in vulnerability. They will simply say, "I see you. I'm still here." And in their presence, you will soften, not because you're trying to be good or pleasing or safe, but because your soul recognizes something ancient, something steady, something that doesn't ask you to shrink. This love is not earned. It is received because you finally stopped performing. You finally chose peace over chaos. You finally became the version of you who no longer accepts being loved only in fragments. Carl Jung once reminded us, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And now you choose to become someone who protects their peace. Someone who tells the truth even when it costs connection. Someone who honors their boundaries like sacred scripture. Someone who no longer disappears to be loved. Someone who would rather walk alone than ever again betray their soul just to be kept. And when someone comes along who sees you in that truth, you won't have to explain why you left the old stories behind. You won't have to justify your solitude. You won't have to shrink to be held. They will know. They will feel the weight of your journey, and they will bow to it gently, not to possess it, but to join you in it. Because in the end, people fall in love with you for only two reasons. Either they fall for the version of you that helps them escape themselves, or they fall for the version of you that reminds them of who they really are. One turns you into a mirror, the other into a doorway. Let it always be the second. Let love always be true. You are not too much. You are not too late. You are not behind. You are becoming. And the ones who are meant to walk with you in that truth, they are becoming too. Welcome to Empire of the Mind. Hit the subscribe button for more self-awakening videos and turn on notification.